we're just building in extra margin. Like we're building in wiggle room, and we're also going that next step of what is our plan B? What's the alternative? In the military, we have this phrase like no plan survives first contact. We're talking about the contact of the enemy. Like we can have a plan of where we want to go, what we want to do, but the enemy's somewhere and things will happen, right? And things will throw us off. And so if we know that from the outset, it doesn't actually have to throw us off, right? We know what we're going to do and where we're going to move, and it can just be that much more intentional.
Overwhelm, reaction mode, and just keeping up are the old way.
You need real, root-level strategies and practical steps to grow your business or ministry without exhaustion and burnout.
Hi there, we're Anna Saucier
And Megan Gephardt,
best friends and business consultants who help faith-filled women create sustainable growth through simple strategy with a people-first approach.
Here at Apostolic Fruit, we hope to offer you clarity, support, accompaniment, and healing.
One tiny step at a time.
Hello, friends. This is Megan Gephardt and Anna Saucier here. We're going to come back to you again on the topic of capacity today, and we'll follow the conversation last time about the paradigm shift of beginning to look at business and ministry and our work and really life in a way that's a bit different than the norm, that's different than the culture that we are so surrounded by and steeped in, especially in the business world. So today we're going to offer you 7 practical ways to honor your capacity while growing and scaling. So we'll just dive right in. Number 1 is simplify and prioritize. So just because you can doesn't mean that you should. And I know that's kind of obvious, but we have to constantly remind ourselves of this. And there is a power in just taking that pause and evaluating and developing a discipline in pausing enough to always come back to the question of how can this be simpler? And instead of what we often tend to do is just, okay, there's all this I've got to make happen. Like I just need to push through and figure out a way to make it all happen. But there's a deeper question of, does all of this actually need to be done in the first place? That I think we sometimes miss in the process. So there's a lot of underlying assumptions and shoulds that tend to hang over our heads, or, again, things that we've adopted as shoulds, and we need to pause and start with really simply asking, what am I saying yes to? What am I saying no to? And those yeses are things that we are deciding to intentionally give our attention and our time and energy to, while the no's are really a place of permission. And it can just be even on a monthly basis, you're reevaluating what's all on your plate, what you're saying yes to and what you're saying no to. And honestly, even just this simple action, doing this over the last few years since Anna has originally taught it to me, has just been so, so helpful. Again, it's a simple thing that can get overlooked. So just asking those questions, where am I overextended? What feels heavy right now? Where might I be saying yes to too much? And what are the deeper patterns there that lead me to constantly saying yes, maybe without asking those deeper questions? And then what do I need to feel and be more supported in this work or other areas of life that can help lend itself to some of that clarity on how can we prioritize or simplify things? And this really also is about identifying what is going to move the needle forward most and letting go of the unnecessary complexity, because we can tend to basically run ourselves into the ground trying to manage unnecessary complexity accidentally.
Yes, absolutely. Simplify, simplify. It's harder than it sounds. Number 2, I want to invite you into is considering what bucket you're prioritizing. And I'm looking at this as energy, to-dos or tasks, or time. And a lot of times we're operating in focusing on all the things I need to get done as the overall priority, or you're looking at time. I need more time. This is all the time I have. I need to fit as much as possible into this time. Very rarely are we focused on energy and energy capacity. And this is another part of the paradigm shift that we look at, and where I want to invite you into is to look a bit more at energy and look at where your energy is going, because that's actually the most renewable. It's way more renewable than time. And when we're putting our energy toward things that are draining, we're going to feel that near constant overwhelm, stress. And one interesting thing that can happen with this is we ask, where's my energy going? if you haven't done things like prioritizing or simplifying, like Megan was talking about, or some of the other practical things that we're going to talk about, then you're probably giving a lot of energy to context switching, to carrying stress, to decision fatigue. And so this is one of the awareness and practical things that makes everything else easier. Just asking, where is my energy going? So we can identify, is it going to a lot of the context switching? Is it going to decision fatigue? And then beginning to look at, well, what can I do differently in these areas? We actually just got out of a client planning session with a couple who does life and business together. And they came and they hired us because they were stepping all over each other in who does what and who is on first and who's picking up the kids and who's doing the podcast editing, and so much energy going to the coordination of all of those things. And we can get stuck in this loop of all of that happening because we believe that we don't have time to slow down and do the prioritizing and do the simplifying and these other things. So invitation practically here is to ask yourself, when do you do your best energy work? When do you have the energy that allows you to flow in your areas of genius, in the deep work that you actually want to be doing throughout the day or throughout the week? And we're talking mostly to women here, so be aware of your menstrual cycles and how your energy shifts throughout those weeks. Recognizing too for yourself, what types of energy do you need for different types of tasks? And this is a very introspective piece. This is going to look different for everyone. Do you feel drained coming out of client calls, or are they energizing? Do you feel drained doing admin tasks, or is it kind of fun to catch up on the finances? We all have all these different kinds of tasks that we're doing. Deep work, maybe it's writing, maybe it's strategic work, finances, exercise, client calls, marketing and connections, and beginning to just notice and get curious about how your energy feels as you're doing these different things. And then you can begin implementing experiments around those and also holding boundaries on those. So asking yourself, what intentional decision do I need to make in order to protect my energy for this thing where I'm not going to be distracted or I'm not going to be pulled into extra decisions? And how am I going to implement that? Because the only person that can take ownership over that is you.
Yeah, it can be so transformative to think about, how do I need to structure my weeks around my energy and the types of energy rather than just looking at all the tasks on the same level and playing field? They're different and they affect you differently. So that's really, really important. And then the next one, number 3, is integrating a simple touch point that checks in with yourself and your capacity. And if you have a team, checking in with your team or checking in with a business partner. And again, this is about the rhythms over reaction. So we want to get to a place where we're to the left of the breaking point, right? Because that's what often happens. We can get to a point where now everything feels like it's crumbling or we can't hold it all together anymore. And we want to develop the awareness and attunement of our needs before we can get to that point. And so a good forcing function is to develop a structure around this, which is basically a rhythm. And so if we integrate it into any existing rhythms inside our business, whether it's planning cycles or decision-making processes, this can be really helpful. So we would recommend integrating it into a monthly planning process by, for example, considering, well, what factors will affect my capacity for work this month? Do my kids have spring break? So is this one week going to look totally different? Is there travel, holidays? Are there other things happening that will affect my capacity? Another time that we would invite you to do this is in a set the week process. So the beginning of each week, or as you're reviewing the week ahead, again, look at your capacity and what you identify as those needs proactively. As another example, practically speaking, we're just working with some clients on a launch strategy. And as part of the planning, we're helping them create a capacity protection plan. So we are helping encourage them to think about, what are your non-negotiables? What is going to help you sustain your energy, your peace, your groundedness, taking care of yourself, baseline that you need to show up in the way that you want to show up for those that you're making invitations into your program with. And this is simple things like prioritizing personal time for prayer, being out in nature, boundaries with screen time, exercise, like actually taking the time to cook nourishing food rather than just pushing through and working through, which is so easy during a launch, especially. it's easy to just throw everything out. Like, okay, everything goes, it's launch period, but that's not sustainable at the end of the day. And we're going to miss the ability to show up in the way that we want to. Another opportunity to do this, we do with our clients, is a tool for a weekly check-in that we call the weekly human needs check-in. And basically, it's just very, very simply asking, where are you spiritually? How's your spiritual life been this week? Your mental, emotional well-being? How are your closest relationships feeling? How supported did you feel this week? Where are you in terms of sleep, hydration, nutrition, movement? And again, it's just drawing awareness to these different places. And then you can set an intention of like, I want to adjust this one area, do something different next week, or I need to have a conversation, or I need to pour into my relationships in this particular way. So these are just very practical ways we can bring this into our weekly, monthly, or even daily rhythms.
Awesome. Number 4, you're not meant to do this alone. So we want to look at how we can grow with support and not just more work. There are many internal linear bits and trainings and ways we've all been conditioned in this to go at it alone, and that support is a weakness somehow. And so I just want to bring awareness to that and invite you to recognize where that's present within yourself, because that's important as we invite you to do these things differently, that you're going to have internal resistance to it. And that's just the way of growth and change. And what's interesting here is that we can all love the idea of support. Like, oh, it'd be amazing to have an assistant or a whole team of people. And if I didn't have to carry this alone, and what would it look like? Like, this is amazing to think about having more support to be able to hire and delegate or even automate things out. But you may have also had the experience where you start going down that road and you realize that, well, there's a bit of complexity, or I don't know how to do that. Or maybe you've recognized that you have an internal belief that it's all on me. So many of us have this, it's all on me. And if you're operating in that belief, then you recognize that your whole system is going to protect against receiving the support. This is really important to recognize the presence of this, that it is very tricky to open and let go and not do this by yourself. One interesting area in this too is, where are you allowing God to come into the picture in terms of your growth and scaling? And I think it's really common for us as faithful women to open to God in terms of, okay, give me the grace to do the things and give me the strength to do the things. But that again is like, okay, give it to me so I can do it. Right? Is this our prayer? Like, give me the strength I need so I can do the things so I can grow and scale. Recognizing that that leaves out the stuff that He can do in the background while you're taking a nap. Right? Can we consider that that might be a possibility? That the growth and scaling of your mission is not linearly tied to the things that you are doing, such that in order for this to grow bigger, I need to do more, or my people need to do more, or we as a collective whole need to do more. So I invite you to consider that shift as well.
Yeah, so good, Anna. So number 5 is, do you need to adjust? I want to invite you to look at that not as a failure, but as information. So if you need to adjust a plan, if you need to push back a timeline, it doesn't have to be looked at with this sense of defeat around it. And I know that you'll be fighting against yourself in this, trust me, because Anna and I constantly are recognizing we have stuff come up around this when we make decisions differently. But I want to invite you to just be aware of that. There will be guilt or shame. You'll have this sense of like, okay, it's weak to extend my timeline. It's a real mindset shift that, no, we can be empowered to make a different choice, and we're intentionally valuing something different here, and that this is a strategy for longevity. And so, again, not necessarily as a failure, but it's information. And so where can we suspend the sense of judgment for a moment even and get curious? When things take longer than expected, it's data. It's something we can better account for the next time, the real time and energy expenditure something takes versus what we may have estimated. often, I think, especially if you're a perfectionist, we can tend to either overcomplicate things or just add unnecessary layers of work to marginally create a different result or improve it 5%, but it ends up taking double the amount of time to improve that last 5%. And so these are all places, again, of information and data and places of learning. And then another piece that we've seen and we've felt and personally experienced, we see this a lot with clients, is let's just say you're in a launch or you're trying to market a particular program and you're seeing, oh, wow, I'm not getting the results that I'm expecting. Like, people are not signing up. What's going on here? And often there's obviously a sense of discouragement, but there can also be a lot of layers of judgment on that. And so it's, again, an invitation in that moment. I want to encourage you to get curious. And sometimes this is one of those places that the Lord wants us to pause, to listen to Him, and even just wonder, how can I meet my people where they're at a little bit better right now? What barriers might they be experiencing? What do they need in order to feel safe to move forward in what I'm inviting them into? What do I need to feel safer in inviting them in the first place? These are things we can bypass when we're just so focused on doing, or we're seeing whatever's happening as failure or something that is not going exactly the way we expect as a failure.
I'm so glad you brought in the people first awareness of that, because if we're unintentionally operating as machines and expecting other people to be machines, then I've seen leaders just be in this place where, okay, everything just needs to get done. And so we're just going to figure out how to get it done. And this is the plan. And even if people have to stay up all night, we're just going to make it happen. We'll throw another body at it. But in that mindset, we're not thinking of any of those things that you just shared. Like, what are their needs? What is the capacity of the whole team? What if somebody gets sick? And it flows into number 6, being to plan for the unexpected. And most leaders don't plan for the unexpected. It's really vulnerable to make a plan, or as we in our work like to call them experiments, like to lay out an experiment and say, okay, what are we going to do when this doesn't work out? It's really, really vulnerable. It brings a lot of awareness to our infallibility and to the uncertainty of everything that we're doing here. And just like I spoke 2 points ago, that's where really leaves room for the Lord to work as well. And sometimes that's the biggest benefit of doing this. So as we seek to plan for the unexpected, it's okay to set goals, assuming everything will not go perfectly. And instead of when unexpected obstacles arise, often that puts us into a scramble and react mode rather than, oh yeah, we have a plan for this, right? And then it eliminates so much stress and often blaming and resentment throughout the team when we've already planned for this in a way that honors everyone's capacity. So the solution then in several layers of the planning is to look at rhythms over rigid plans, where we are in a rhythm of looking back to understand, why did things in the past work or not work? Often we're jumping straight to the next thing rather than, like when we work with our clients in monthly planning, first we begin with reviewing and reflecting on the past month. What didn't you do? What did you do? What didn't work out? Why not? And bringing that curiosity in. So they begin to normalize that curiosity and that things don't always go as planned. Right? If we never look back and recognize that this actually always happens, then that's not going to become normal within your own mind and body. So part of this rhythm is to look back. And then as we plan or design experiments for the business, looking at it like a garden, which we've talked about before, not an industrial factory, recognizing that growth happens in cycles and in seasons, and natural growth doesn't happen according to, I say that it's going to get done and therefore it's going to get done. It is a process of observation and of providing nutrients and sunlight and water, and then seeing what comes forth. Seeing what emerges from the care and the intuition and the wisdom and all of these resources that we have access to. We pour those in, and then we allow things to emerge from that. So what if we account for the unexpected to happen? Here, Megs, I know you wanted to share something around this too.
Yeah. As part of this accounting for unexpected, we're just building in extra margin. Like we're building in wiggle room, and we're also going that next step of what is our plan B? What's the alternative? In the military, we have this phrase like no plan survives first contact. We're talking about the contact of the enemy. Like we can have a plan of where we want to go, what we want to do, but the enemy's somewhere and things will happen, right? And things will throw us off. And so if we know that from the outset, it doesn't actually have to throw us off, right? We know what we're going to do and where we're going to move, and it can just be that much more intentional. And then I want to give the example, we often are doing this for ourselves and encouraging our clients to define what's the MVP, the minimum viable product for this. It could be an offer. It could be an update to a website. It could be, any number of things. And this is one of those key ways that you can simplify and prioritize, but also avoid unnecessary complexity and really honor your capacity. Because what happens is we tend to have really often unrealistic expectations in our mind of like, this is the standard. The standard is super high, right? And so we're going to do everything possible, regardless of how much real-time energy capacity we have, to just meet that standard. And are we defining that standard intentionally? So that's what this invitation is, to define the minimum viable product. It's like when everything feels like a priority, or when everything feels important to hold ourselves up to, we can ask the questions of like, what actually is our kind of just good enough criteria here? What's the simplest version of this that still produces results that would be fruitful? And it's a way to set really healthy boundaries and be intentional about those expectations for ourselves and also for our team. And so the example here is a live workshop that we were supporting clients in. Their marketing tended to like consume all of their energy for the month. And they reflected back like, this took way more energy than we thought it would take. And it's because they had the standard in their mind of holding themselves to writing tons of emails, just getting as many people as humanly possible into the workshop. And so instead of, let's just do as much as possible, let's define what is our good enough. Maybe it's 3 to 5 emails, and that's all we have capacity for when we look at the wholeness of what we're doing this month. And we have to then acclimate to accepting that ourselves. Like there may be discomfort in that, because maybe we're used to just pushing through and doing as much as possible, but this is what is actually honoring of our capacity, because otherwise we'd be compromising our well-being. We would actually not be honoring our real priorities this month. This would just take over everything. So this ties in with number 7, our last point, which is you always have a choice. You have that permission to do something differently or to adjust the plan. You have the freedom to respond in the way that you want to. You don't have to push through no matter what. And often we have these arbitrary standards or arbitrary timelines in our mind for ourselves or for our business or even for our team. And we tend to beat ourselves up about those timelines. And most of the time, we just need to make a different decision in the moment when we really look at like what would be honoring of us as a human being, of our team as human beings. And it's hard, but we need to recognize that pretty much none of our work is an emergency. And our whole system sometimes is used to operating from that space of like, it's always an emergency. Everything is urgent and so important. And that's where coming out of that hyperdrive almost, right, is a really, really healing space to be. And so that's part of our invitation to you. And I just want to share the story of our podcast launch as an example here. We initially planned to launch the podcast sooner, about a month earlier than we ended up doing. And as we accounted for our real capacity, we just realized we needed more time and space. And Anna was kind of in the middle of a move, transition for her family. My husband was about to leave or was leaving for 2.5 months for military duty. We were onboarding new team members inside our business and in a fractional director of operations client business. There were lots of big things happening. And we told our podcast producer we could make it happen, but it feels like it would be pushing through too much. And we feel much more at peace and more in integrity, just allowing more spaciousness. And as soon as we made that decision, again, we worked through those dimensions of like, does this feel like a failure? Does this feel like a defeat? There is a letdown there. But at the same time, when we made that decision to extend the timeline, we instantly felt that relief. And it like opened up so much more space to show up creatively and to like embrace this and really serve from the place that we wanted to, a more pure place rather than a place of pressure or obligation. And so that adjustment of the plan became really life-giving. And yeah, and that's what I want to invite you into is like, what if that's possible? What if it doesn't have to be a failure? What if it doesn't have to be a defeat, but it can be a really beautiful gift to you and everyone involved in the mission, and also allow the Lord to do even more work.
Thanks, Megan. And I love that we end on the choice that you have full permission in all of this, because we can go around and in all of these things and building business, in expanding our mission. And a lot of us have been operating in a place of looking for someone to tell us what to do and how to do it and what the step-by-step is and what do I need to do in order to grow and scale this thing. And we give up a lot of that choice in this. And we're not here now to tell you, oh, but now you need to do it this way. And you just need to do these practical steps in order to honor your capacity, and then everything will be fixed and you'll grow and scale this thing. It is really important for you to recognize that you have the choice to do it differently in the way that we're bringing awareness to, but you also have the choice to do it in the way that you've been doing it. And the most important question here is it working for you or not? And we always want to put that back to you and re-empower you to say, do you want to continue operating in this, or do you want to do it differently? And when you can make even just the first choice of, no, I do want to explore doing this differently. And then always coming back into your own awareness of, okay, how does that feel? Does it feel really vulnerable? Does it feel really shaky or iffy? And that's a really important part of it, to be present to this very cyclic, very vulnerable, very courageous way of changing and operating in this new paradigm. So I want to invite you to consider the things that we've shared and in all of these 7 practical steps, and make a decision if you are ready to start with one of them, and if you want to begin playing in that as an experiment in doing this differently and honoring your capacity.
We hope you loved today's episode. If so, would you take a moment to share it with a friend?
If you haven't already, come connect with us human to human at apostolicfruit.com/connect. When you're ready, we'd love to support you more deeply.
May the Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you,
and turn his face toward you and give you peace.